Thanks.
We're live.
All right.
We're going to call the meeting to order at 6:07. This is a meeting of the Franklin School Board Budget Workshop on March 3rd, 2020. We can stand for the salute of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has everybody received a copy over our laptops from Jefferson on the 2020-2021 budget documents?
Yes.
Everybody from the board received this?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the remainder of the meeting over to our superintendent and business administrator to walk us through this budget that is being presented to us tonight.
All right, thank you, Chairman Dow. So I wanted to start kind of with the process, just to refresh people's memories about how we got to where we are at this point. So back in the middle of December, principals and our department heads reached out to staff and collected all the information they could about what people wanted or needed for the upcoming budget year. So the principals have backup binders with all kinds of information in them, and at any point you want to take a look at them sometime, feel free, they're here at the SAU for you to take a look at if you need to. Jefferson put together a revenue sheet for us based on estimated revenues for us to have a starting point. What we did was sit as an administrative team in January. We looked at the estimated revenues. We looked at the requests from all the department heads and principals. And that's how we started the process of what do we have, what do we need, and how are we gonna get there. So to start, I want to turn it over to Jefferson to go through the original revenue projections, which is what we're going to start with tonight. And then I'll continue on through the process to get you up to speed on where we're at this point. So let's do revenues for right now. Jefferson.
Yep, so this is a sheet, if everybody has one, there's a printed out copy, I think we'll provide to everybody. It has 4 columns, so obviously what we actually had for 18-19, what we have revised this year for 19-20, and this is based off of what we got approved with the city council on November 3rd or 4th or whatever that first Monday in November was, once we, was it November? Yeah. Once we have the new adequacy numbers and the state passed the budget finally. Excuse me. And then the third column is what I would say fairly conservative revenue estimates for this upcoming year. And fourth column is the difference between current year and potential next year. Just a quick rundown of the revenues. Special education aid, which is based off of out-of-district costs for the current year, what we would anticipate getting back from the state based on a formula that they do on applicable tuition that we pay to other institutions like Spalding Youth Center or NFI North or any other school district where we have to send a child for services that we can't provide. And it's, the state typically reimburse us at 3 times the state average from that point up to $150,000. They give us what that our costs would have been that period of time, and then that would be called an entitlement. And then, of course, they only give us a percentage of the entitlement, which is where we got 120. We actually received less than $126,000. Our entitlement for this year was actually closer to $162,000. So it was about 71% of our entitlement we actually ended up getting from the state. So that number that I have for next year, $100,000, that was based off of our anticipated costs this year that we are sending kids out of district for services. Kindergarten aid disappeared because that was part of the Keno Garden. When communities around the state voted to have Keno in their state, they would generate revenue to the state, and it was a minimum of at least $1,100 per child to any school district that had full-day kindergarten. They've did away with that in the new state budget and made it part of the adequacy aid formula. So that's why there's no value in that one. Charter school aid is based on the fact that we have to provide special ed services to kids that go to the charter school, and we get an ADM, average daily membership amount, for each child that is in membership of that charter school that we provide services to. It's a flat amount of, I think, about $1,900 per child. So we got about just under $35,000 this year, so I'm estimating about $30,000 for next year. Vocational Transportation Aid is just a number that we get. It doesn't have anything to actually do with our costs, but it's an amount that gets claimed by the Hewitt Center for us, for any of our kids that attend Hewitt Center or Winnisquam for any of the vocational programs. As you see, we got $8,900 last year. In 18-19, we actually got about $7,500 this year. Then the big one, adequate education grant, that's based on the new formula that the state came up with. Also based on average daily membership, has many components to it. Our total average daily membership or enrolled students, number of free and reduced students, number of special ed students, certain pieces like English language learner students, third grade capability reading students that need services for that. And then the new two pieces, well, they were also restored a stabilization grant, which is part of that. That was $665,000 that was restored to the original amount, which I think was close to $4.2 million total. We lose 4% of that, $4.2 million every year for 4 years until they decided to restore it all, which gave us back $665,000. And then there's two other pieces that are going to have to be renegotiated in the next state budget, and those are disparity aid and free and reduced aid, another free and reduced aid piece. Those are one times in this current biennium, so we'll see how that plays out after the 2021 year and current negotiations at the state. As you can see, it's $751,000 more than what we received this year. That's based on how the new formula was calculated. Building aid, that was based off of an old formula that the state used to provide building aid to school districts on a percentage of any construction costs that any district entered into during a certain time period. You can see it dropped by $100,000 because we had the final payment on one of our bonds last year, and because of that final, actually it was this year, because of that final payment, that building aid piece also goes away because it's only during the time of the loan. We still have another loan in there, obviously that's where that $82,000 comes from. Indirect costs, which are the administration costs of running the federal grants that we get, or any of the grants that we get through the state from federal government. Medicaid reimbursement, which is another component of special education aid related to services that we provide to students that are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. We get approximately 50% of those eligible services. And as we saw in 18-19, we got over $300,000, but when the emergency ruling went through this past August, I anticipated that because of that and the requirements needed for what would be considered eligible services became more strict. I had to adjust that down. I tried to go as conservative as I think we could, still get away with it. I still don't know where we're going to end up for this year, so we'll have to see. We just started getting some funding, and just because we've been able to get everything back that we needed to make those orders for those children valid and reimbursable. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest of the year. I went with the same number for that. The E-rate funding is based off of the federal government funding for communities throughout the country. Also on free and reduced populations, we get reimbursed for internet access costs that we have to pay. If we have a high free and reduced or poverty population, they'll reimburse us a percentage based off of that, based on our costs that we send in, our invoices that we spend over the year. So it's a pretty safe number, I believe, there. Tuition we've been using is money we get from another school district for a child to come to our district. We do have one child currently that does do that. Earnings savings on investments, just interest on our bank account. Other local revenue can be small pieces of things, refunds that we might get, or say somebody got, staff member had jury duty, we would pay them normally, and they would just send us a check for that if we sell something, things like that. Insurance premium holidays, we get these premium holidays insurance from our health insurance providers and from our property liability, unemployment, and work comp providers. School care, I already know we're gonna get about $77,000 from them next year on credit on our first July statement. So I've added that number in there. It's about $77,000 of that. And then the difference is unemployment premium holiday, which we received from Primex, which how premium holiday insurances typically work is these insurance companies and providers have a pool of money, and they're not allowed to exceed a certain amount in that pool. And if they do, they have to return that money to all the members. So that's how we ended up with these coming our way. I'm using the unemployment premium holiday to offset our unemployment costs for next year, holding what we received in a deferred revenue for the subsequent year, once we know what our actual cost will be for 2021 when we see that. I typically budget it based off of the state rate, which is 0.08% per 0.08% of wages per person, up to a maximum of $14,000. That would be the rate would be applied to, which technically would max at $112 per person. So that's how I typically budget unemployment. Athletic receipts, those are gate receipts for any sporting events that the school district holds, that Danny Sylvester collects. The next 4 items on there, there's no amount of money applied to that. We have potentially the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation aware, we got $75,000 this year. There is a big possibility that we will get it again this year. Barbara Slayton, our Director of Student Wellness, is working on an application with that, and she's been speaking with New Hampshire Charitable Foundation directly about that. Had somebody come in and actually shadow what our social workers do with the schools, and they were very impressed and definitely recognized our need to see sustainable funding for that. So that has a potentially that we could get another good chunk of money from them next year also. Down at the bottom of that list, the unreserved fund balance, I very conservatively put $100,000 in there, and that is a fluid number that we will discuss further as we go through tonight. And then down below that, you see district appropriation, which is the amount of taxes raised locally for education by the city. They just told us last night that the CPI was 2.3%, so that would actually increase that number by a little over $100,000. So that could also go up and add to our revenues and improve that piece there. There's also other items, I think they call them pickups or something like that, that potentially could add even more money. I don't know, that's usually based on construction and other things that go on in the city, but we won't know that. I don't think we'll get a solid number from the city until April at that point. Education tax is the statewide education property tax, which is the amount of money that the state collects from all the communities throughout the state and gets retained locally. The rate for next year is $1.90 per thousand, based on your assessments through each community. Total amount I think that is collected statewide is $383 million. I think is the number correctly. But of that amount, 1.2 million is what we get to retain locally for the school district, which is about $43,500 more than last year. So that's a total general fund piece. Food service transfers is basically the recognizing of how much revenue we might get from food service. And then the total of those two together, which is right now down about $264,000 from the current year to next year. But remember, I did use conservative numbers, so it could be closer to on par if we change things. Grant funds, which are obviously in a separate fund, and grant revenue and grant expenditures are always the same, so they offset each other completely. I did a more detailed analysis of the grants that I anticipate. Now, this is an anticipation because I won't know these allocations until towards the end of the year. May, June, July is when we start getting these allocations. So I'm using historical amounts as reference as to what we could potentially get. I could be a little high on that too, because I just learned that one of the grants might be going away, rural low-income schools grants that we get, which is we use for professional development, and it gets about just under 20 grand. That might actually go completely away because the federal government said that they were calculating it wrong, and some of the states shouldn't have been getting the money. So we'll see what happens, plays out there. And then you see down at the bottom our total grant revenues, which, if you include the grant funds, is up about $27,000. But as with the grant funds, it's always important to remember that grant funds have to be spent only on a specific purpose, so we can't take what we spend or budget in the general fund and move it to grant funds. It's not allowed. There's very specific rules and regulations for it. The latest iteration of the Title Is and the Title Grants fall under something called ESEA, and they don't allow you what they call supplanting, which means you take something out of your general fund budget and put it into grant funds and just pay for it for grant funds. You're not allowed to do that. If you budget in your general fund, you can't ever take it over and use it for grant funds. So in the grant funds, we typically have 7 teachers under Title I with 5 or 6 support staff, and then IDEA has another 4 case managers that are funded out of that. So that's typically most of the personnel. A good chunk of Jewel Finley's salary is also funded out of Title II as a curriculum director. And that's basically the rundown of the revenues.
Is there any questions on revenues for Jefferson? Deb?
Under the vocational transportation aid, you said that Hewitt puts in for it. The
Correct.
money comes directly to us?
Correct.
Or, okay.
Yep.
And the second question was under insurance premium holidays. You mentioned that it was school care, workman's comp. What about health trust?
Health Trust hasn't given us a premium holiday recently.
Okay.
Yep. And they haven't at least notified us of any that we're getting. The only ones I have right now that I'm aware of and are been budgeting for is the school care piece, which they provided to us when they gave us our current rates for the upcoming year for 2021. And Primex, when they sent us our latest unemployment invoice for this year, they said you also are getting $47,000 I think in premium holiday, which I used to offset our costs for this year and hope to use to offset our costs for next year too.
And on the E-rate funding, you stated that it was for internet. Does that include the phone as well? Is that
No,
part of the process?
Phone, it used to include the phone, but they did away with that over the last couple of years.
Okay.
There's 2 categories, Category 1 and Category 2. Category 2 is typically funded directly, not through us necessarily, but if we have like a wireless project or a networking project where
Right.
we're replacing infrastructure pieces, we usually have to pay 20% of the cost, and then the federal government will pay the difference.
And will we have anything like that
We
going on?
did some this year, actually. We just
This year, we replaced a ton of switches and wireless. Next year, I have a small project,
Okay.
but I haven't gotten it approved through the E-rate yet, so I won't know. We often don't hear about that until September, and then we have to wait the following summer and stuff.
And we have a third party that handles all that stuff for us, which is really good. It helps
Okay.
us a lot.
That's my question.
Thanks, Deb. Is there any other financial questions for Jefferson? Yes,
I
Cecile?
thought the school did a lot of energy savings, and why aren't we, can't
So
get
we-
any rebates for
We did,
that energy?
we did. We've
Oh.
already gotten those.
Oh, so
We
it's
only
only
get
a
them
one
1 year.
time? Oh,
We only get them in 1
okay,
year,
all
so,
right.
yeah. But we already got those, that was in 18-19.
Oh,
We
okay.
received $195,000.
We enjoyed them, Cecile.
But our energy savings are in the tens of thousands a
Yeah,
year,
but
right?
our energy
70,000.
savings, 76,000 at minimum that we save every year.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So that's really.
So that was a guarantee when EEI did the project for us, okay? As they said, the rebates is a one-time thing, so we've gotten all those rebates, and they're in the 18-19 budget. But when we did the contract with EEI, we're guaranteed a savings of $76,000 a year for the next 17 years. Okay, or and above that too, okay? And the agreement was that when we entered the agreement with them is that if we don't make that, if we don't get that savings, EEI makes the difference up for us. So, we have done that, we've met with EEI, we had our first meeting with them, and the numbers all looked good, so that savings is actually, gonna, you'd see that within the budget on electricity and everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on revenue?
Well, it's good to see this year where revenue nearly equally matches the consolidated financial statement, income versus expenses.
Right.
Yeah. So we can have treats next week.
Yeah. All right, any
So
other,
that, well, go ahead.
any other questions for Jefferson before we move on? All right, thank you, Jefferson.
All right, so that took us to mid-January, where we then looked at the revenues, which Jefferson just went over, and then we looked at all of the submissions from our principals and department heads. So I will take you to the top of the two-sided page with the bigger numbers so that you can read them. And if you look at the top of that page, you'll see the original budget submissions was $18,100,320.15. That was everything that was submitted to us throughout the district. If you subtract out the recently approved custodial and support staff agreements, we saved a little bit of money there. And then the teachers' agreement that just passed last night is now added into that amount. The total budget came to $18,334,909, which leaves us a gap of about 1.5 million, give or take.
Is that what federal funds do?
That's with federal funds. So all you have to do is take your grand total revenues that we just went over, subtract from the total budget that was requested. That's what the administration faced, middle of January. So then we began the process of sitting down with everybody and trimming the budget. My thought process, and it's still my thought process, is that we should be developing a tax cap budget this year with the money that we have received from the state, the extra money, and the fact that we have passed 3 collective bargaining agreements. My belief is that that's the direction we should go in, and that's how I am going to present tonight. Certainly the board's decision to make that decision or a different decision is definitely in your purview to do that. So as we went and met with everybody, the cuts that we've made are all listed below, and we're gonna go through these with you, so you'll know what it is that we've proposed. And this is all proposed because this is your budget, it's not my budget, okay? So the first position we looked at is the custodial position that we added in November. We've gone through 3 custodians in that time, and it is currently unfilled. And we've decided to keep it unfilled based on the tightness of this year's budget. We froze the budget about a month ago, and we decided to say, not only are we having trouble filling that position, but financially, we believe we're in a better shape if we save that money and have it as a cushion, either to use for next year as part of the fund balance, or to help us with some projects that we're gonna talk about a little bit later tonight, this year. So that was the first cut that we proposed. You can see the amount that's there as well. And by the way, if you have any questions, just ask along the way, don't wait, okay? We then decided to cut the Paul Smith asbestos cafeteria project. Not because we don't need to do it, but we believe it should be done this year. And use this year's money to do it. So we'll get to that part tonight too. But that's why we removed it from next year's budget. Same thing goes for the Franklin Middle School Entryway project. I believe it should come out of this year's budget money, so that we wouldn't have to budget for it next year. We met with Danny. We have not had JV field hockey or baseball teams last year, so he was comfortable cutting the coaches' positions. We did commit to him that if we did have enough kids, we would obviously find the money to have a team. Of course, we don't wanna not have the team, we'll find it if we have to. But he's pretty confident that he could do without that based on the numbers of kids playing. We trimmed a Paul Smith kindergarten teacher. We will come back to you in a little while and talk to you about why that's probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do this in order, so we're in mid-January right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to do this so you can understand the thought process as we went through this. But at that point in the game, we trimmed the kindergarten teacher, going with 5. We also trimmed a second grade teacher at that point that Sue had been asking for. We trimmed an art teacher that Sue had asked for. We trimmed a full-time assistant principal that Sue had asked for. We trimmed art supplies, since there was no art teacher. We trimmed some English supplies. We trimmed art books. We trimmed a little bit of reading books, Fountas and Pinnell. We trimmed keyboarding without tiers at Paul Smith School. Go ahead, Deb.
The reading books, did we just buy some through
Yeah.
this year's budget?
Yes, and I don't know if it's the same ones that she was talking about for next year. Sue, you can answer that. Go ahead.
So because you're gonna hear about the enrollment in a little bit, so they're made to share between 2 teachers, so because we're increasing our teachers, we need to get another set.
So this is in addition to what we just purchased this last
But
board meeting?
Last board meeting were our benchmark assessments. This
Okay.
is actually the reading program.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. A software reflex math program that Sue doesn't need anymore because of the Zern program that you just approved last month. Reading A to Z license, a software program for reading. Nurses' dues and fees we trimmed. We got to the middle school, we trimmed 2 teachers that Ken had asked for his Winnie team.
4, 5, 6 downstairs.
4, 5, 6 downstairs, he asked for 2 teachers. We said we couldn't do it at this point, based on the financial piece. We trimmed the tech ed teacher he asked for. Currently, he has 1 class for 8th graders with the high school teacher going down there to teach tech ed. He asked for a full-time position. We trimmed that. We trimmed all the music pieces in the budget because they have a large sum of money in their account that they can use for most of what they've been asking for. So the instrument repair, industrial arts, we trimmed at middle school because we cut the program. Music supplies, cut. General supplies, we trimmed it by 2,000. Felt we could live with that. Nursing supplies, we trimmed. Principal conferences, I added 2,000, I think, to at least 2,000 to the middle and high school and 1,000 to the elementary school. That's not just for principals, it's for them to also direct teachers to go to conferences that they need them to go to. And I feel like we definitely need to have the ability to get the teachers the help that they need, and principals need to have that money so they can say, I really want you to go see this person because I think they'll help you with what you're having trouble with. But it's also for them to go to conferences as well, which is important. We trimmed field trips at the middle school. They asked, at the high school, they asked for a support staff member at the CAP program that's off-site. That's our off-site high school program that's right across from City Hall. I'm sorry, yes. The numbers to the right are the totals of each school that was cut. So if you look at the 362,781, that's what we trimmed out of Paul Smith, including the couple of the athletics that were just lodged together with.
Actually, the first 5 items on there are not included in that number.
Through athletics.
Oh, sorry, it's just Paul Smith, you're right, the
Yeah,
other thing.
Actually, yeah, you started, right there, down with the
There you go,
362.
So that's what we trimmed out of Sue's school, of what was being asked for, just so you know what that is. And then the 236,817 is what was trimmed out of Ken's school.
I have a question
Deb,
on
go ahead.
Ken's. The math supplies calculator, why was that cut and what,
Yeah.
what was the reasoning?
The expense, well, partially because we were trying to control expenses, but because any of these calculators that are needed can be accessed on a Chromebook. So, graphing calculators can be done with a Chromebook app. So we decided to have kids do it with a Chromebook.
So back to the high school, so the teacher assistant at the CAP program that Terry asked for, we said that we couldn't do it. She asks for, she has a part-time teacher assistant to do VLAX. We said we could do without that. That person is retiring.
To do what?
To do VLAX, which is the computer-based learning.
Oh, okay.
So that person monitors a classroom where kids come in and do their computer-based learning.
So
we have,
who will do it for the future?
we propose that the kids do it in the library and that the library specialists monitor the kids in the library so that we can have it done that way. We trim the tutoring line that she has at the high school. We actually, it looks like we increased the technical services for Plato. Is that correct, Jefferson?
Yeah, we put it back in the budget.
put it back in.
wasn't budgeted.
Yeah, so we add that back in, that's something that the CAP kids use a lot. We reduce repairs for the fax program. We cut the instrument repairs. We reduce fax supplies from what was asked for. We reduce math supplies from what was asked for. We cut computer supplies, because we don't have a computer teacher. We trimmed the robotics supplies, but we left in the robotics stipends, Gary? Registration fees, the robotics registration fees. We cut music books, we cut social studies books, we cut some software for the computers at the high school. We cut the, document cameras at the high school for math because we have a grant, not a grant, we had a donation that we are ending up buying those document cameras and we'll be giving them to them already. So we need to double budget it because we already have the means to get it from a donation. We cut the music chairs because like I said, they have their own funds that they can expend and buy them if they need them. We rolled the dice with replacement equipment in the fax program, hoping that the ovens and the refrigerator. Home ec.
Oh, okay.
Home ec, the old home ec, yeah.
But it's
Sorry,
consumer.
family and consumer
Okay.
science, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Trim the guidance counselor conference a little bit, trim the principal's furniture request, trim the field trips at the high school down from what was asked for. Added in an assistant principal stipend of $7,500. The plan there is to think about paying a stipend to someone to step in and help out at the elementary school. And what we're thinking of doing is using Peter at the elementary school in some capacity and having somebody at the high school step in and cover him while he's at the elementary school. So that's just, at this point, it's just a budgeted number, we're not sure exactly what the plan, but when we have a plan, a solid plan, we'll come back to you and say, this is what we think we wanna do with it, but we need to budget something now.
And the difference over the 7,500 is the taxes and at New Hampshire retirement.
All that stuff, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the stipend piece would be $7,500. Okay, the next one is we cut a special ed teacher assistant. Is that from Paul Smith? I think it looks like Paul Smith, okay.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we looked at the special ed budget overall. We cut all the unanticipated placements. So when you talk about rolling the dice, we rolled the dice with Rebecca. So we accounted for all the kids that are out of district right now, but we cut or trimmed most of the other money that was put aside for kids that would go out of district. So we have unanticipated tuition, $160,443.
Well, explain that again, please.
We have students that go out of district, and we
Okay.
pay their tuition.
Okay, like a charter school.
So when we budget,
No,
not a charter school.
not, oh, okay,
No,
all right,
no.
it-
Like Spalding.
okay,
Spalding Youth Center,
Foster
Oh,
care.
NTI North, foster care kids
okay.
that we have to transport. What's the other one I'm thinking of? I just drew a blank. Court placement, thank you. Court placed kids, where the judges will place kids in court and then we have to pay the cost of that.
So they're very specialized facilities that can handle behaviors or learning challenges that we can't handle here per se, essentially.
So when we budgeted this year, we budgeted for every kid that we knew and what that tuition was. So we could get pretty precise about how much it was gonna be, because we know where the kids are. There's some kids that we believe we're gonna be able to bring back, but we still budgeted for them, just in case. But the unanticipated ones is the ones where we said, well, if we trim that money out, that means we're committing to keeping kids in district, and then we need to do all that we can to keep the kids here financially. Now, remember, you did put $80,000 aside in your sped reserve fund earlier in the year, so there is that $80,000 cushion that you have already tucked away for next year or beyond. But that's what these numbers are. These were all unanticipated budget numbers. Delaney?
This is consistent with the last couple of years, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, it's kind of what we've done in the last few years, right? Absolutely. So that's what those next three numbers are there. Special ed travel, we put the $1,500 back in because there is a lot of traveling that goes on to all the different locations. Alternative ed tuition, this is the Laconia Spark program that is no longer in existence. So we had budgeted $50,000 for a student that was going there, which doesn't exist anymore after this year, so that'll, I think it's actually shut down now, but we won't need that money, so that's what that is. District Nurses Conference, grant coordinators hours reduction, so we have a part-time grant coordinator here at the SAU, and we are reducing her hours. She currently works, Jefferson?
We have her scheduled for 15 hours a week, and we're 3 hours a day. But based on efficiencies and stuff that we put in place for the process, I had a discussion with her. She actually came to me and said that 10 hours a week seems more appropriate for that position.
So we were comfortable going from 15 hours to 10, so that's what that money is. We cut office supplies from the superintendent's office, that's the general SAU, and we trimmed our advertising budget as well. We've been having a lot of luck with Indeed, which has been working out really well for us, actually. So that was a full day's work, a lot of tough decisions that we made. Yeah, question?
Paul Smith sped TA open, and then it says move D, what's that mean?
So it's an individual we took from a different level and moved her to the elementary school level to replace an open position that was there.
Okay.
And based on Rebecca's discussion, the head count of individuals that we needed at Paul Smith eliminated an unfilled position that we had budgeted for.
Okay.
So that reduced that open position that we no longer needed to budget for by $36,500.
Now with the district nurse conference, why was that?
It was in the wrong location.
Okay.
That was part of it. It was already budgeted in the conference line,
Yeah.
but dues and fees, it was put, conferences don't belong in their dues and fees, so we had already had an amount budgeted in a separate line
Okay.
for that purpose. Nurses actually, this is nurses, right?
Yeah.
Nurses actually have an amount that's determined by the collective bargaining agreement, and that had already been built into the budget.
Okay.
Any other questions about that part? Cecile, question?
Oh, are we going through this individually, or what are we doing?
Right now, you're asking any questions you want to ask
Okay.
about why we did what we've done at this
Okay.
point.
Well, some of the music thing, is some of the money deleted because of the grants that we received?
Not the grants. Well, some of it is
Well,
grants,
was
I
it-
guess. They have their own fund, and it's quite hefty at this point.
Okay.
We received a lot of donations from
Donations.
Meadowbrook.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, we received about like $5,200 this year from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation to support our music programs here in the district. So that's held aside in what I call a music grant, but it's just a separate fund that has a balance available to be able to supply these pieces that we cut.
Well, actually, I went through the budget itself, and I have questions, but, I don't know, they've gotta be in here someplace, but I haven't quite figured out where they came from. I noticed that, data communication was $4,344. What does that really delete? It was a line item.
So the data communications is our internet access.
Okay.
And so what we budgeted is based on our costs, our current costs. We use a
Okay.
company called First Light that provides us with our internet services. And so what we budgeted in there is based off of our current billing.
Okay. I know that the kindergarten is supposed to be going up, or is it down? It keeps vacillating.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
hold that one for us.
Okay. I also saw like there's a liability athletic insurance was deleted. Now, why would that be
I
deleted?
don't think there was athletic, I don't recall athletic. Any liability insurance, we actually have covered by our Primex provider.
Okay, so that's
So
why.
there's no, we do have a single line for property and liability.
Okay,
Um,
so
But that
it's
covers
not
anything, so
individual.
any other liability throughout the
Okay,
budget isn't
that
actually
makes sense.
necessary.
Okay. The speech services and occupational services, well, again, we're gonna probably get into that, right? More
No, you
than
can
like-
ask that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it looked like a lot of those services were being deleted or lowered. Is there a reason why some of those are being,
I have to look at those to see if there's any significant difference.
sorry, I didn't write the line item.
No, I don't think I proposed anything lower. If anything, I anticipate an increase. And I know the hourly rate for speech, for example, next year, so I use that to calculate my amounts.
Okay.
So I think it stayed about the same or actually went up.
Went up?
Pretty sure it went up.
Okay, maybe I read it
Yeah.
wrong. What, function school library, $20,000 was cut. What does that mean? What's a function school library?
Okay, so it's 222 is library and media services, that's the part of the budget, and there's amounts at each school. Paul Smith Middle School and High School each have a library component for whoever staff there. The biggest cut, the reason why you're seeing the biggest cut is related to the middle school. We had an individual that we budgeted for this year that actually didn't come back, so the person that's currently in that position is a lot less expensive. I think she works less hours too.
Okay.
So that's the main reason for that difference in the cost from what we budgeted from one year to next year.
Okay. Also, I noticed that the grant writer,
Hmm.
some of that was cut.
Yeah,
Is
we
that-
just talked about that, that was because
Reduce the
Yeah, we had
hours,
Oh.
from 15 to 10.
Oh,
That's what he was referring to.
oh, I thought that was the nurse. I'm
No,
sorry.
that was the
I'm-
grant writer, yeah.
Oh, the nurse is the grant writer?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Two separate things.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
okay.
We just reduced the hours of the grant writer because she's very comfortable, this is her first year doing it, but she's gotten very comfortable with the position and feels
Oh,
her
okay.
efficiency in the position
All right.
and processes that
because
we
of-
put in place, says she's like, can really do it pretty well with just
Okay,
10
where's
hours a
that?
week.
Oh, okay, because we always need a lot of grants, so I said, whoa, why should we cut it? Okay, I'll wait.
That it for now, Cecile? You
Yep,
good?
thank you.
Good, all right. Okay, so at that point then, we had trimmed about $1.2 million from the requests. You see that down the bottom of your page. Putting us $324,000 over the tax cap budget. So we talked quite extensively about the fact that revenues hopefully would help us. You know, because it was only January at that point when we did this. And the other piece was that you still had $241,000 this year unspoken for at this point. You had talked a couple months ago about potentially putting it into some type of capital reserve, but we decided to wait until this time of year to figure out what we wanted to do. So we decided to wait and bring this to the Finance Committee, which is what we did. So we've already presented all what you just all saw. We brought to the Finance Committee and started to talk with them about possibilities in terms of increasing the revenue projections. We talked about the $241,000 and maybe we should leverage that. We talked about our belief that we should be doing the asbestos project in the middle school front area project this year, out of this year's money that you had allocated. And we had a good discussion, and I don't know if Deb or Tim or Chris want to share anything at this point about, you know, what we talked about, but.
You're welcome to.
Tim?
Nope, we're all
You
good, I mean,
You good?
I mean, obviously, some of this, we're gonna talk about it when we get into like some of the teachers, some of the things we discussed. But I do feel, that some of this stuff that with the money, but, I was a strong, proponent in supporting that we take some of the 341 to help offset, a tax cap budget, okay? To put
Was that
that-
241?
241.
Okay, you said three.
I'm sorry, 241,000.
Don't throw another
to help-
number out there.
Yeah, to help offset, but some of the other ones on here we'll talk about, when it comes to teachers and stuff, I felt that it was necessary that we have them, but I do agree with the fact that, we do have this, money available, and for $55,000, I think it's important that we get the asbestos, that's something that's needs to be taken care of immediately, for the safety of the students at Paul Smith School, okay? And the entryway, is something that Ken and I have talked about for an extended period of time, to redo the entryway, so, you would have a grassed-in area and two walkways leading, one into the cafeteria, one into the main building, and then a grass area, because we have a lot of water runoff in one end of the parking lot that freezes up all the time, and it's caused a lot of issues at that school. So redesigning that and redoing it over and putting in a nice grassed-in area and whatnot, would alleviate this problem, and take away some of the problems, accidents that have happened there with people falling, and an excessive use of salt and sand that we've had to use there to keep the area clear for our students and faculty that are leaving there. So I do feel very strongly that the entranceway redesign should be done this year. And we have the appropriation for it, so I just feel it's necessary for both the students and the faculty, and I think it's also going to enhance the appearance at the front of the school, so.
And add that 55,000, still will leave 180-ish
Correct, about
thousand in, for us to use for next year, if that's what we choose as a board to do.
So with that discussion with the finance committee, we decided to work off that thought process. So we said, okay, let's take 175,000 of the 241 and throw it into the fund balance so that we can use it toward next year's budget. So that would offset the 324,000 plus here as well. And then we would use the other money that they just talked about to do those two projects this year.
Am I understanding, so we have the 241, but then we're gonna do the cafeteria and the entryway.
Yes.
That would be deducted from the 241.
Correct.
Okay, and then, of the balance of that, you're saying that you wanna put $175,000.
Which is the balance,
Oh,
approximately.
that is, okay, that's
Yes.
the balance. So you wanna put that into this year's, next year's budget?
Yes.
To make up for,
So that would reduce the
the 124,
Right,
okay.
take that off that
All
number.
right, all right.
So we're feeling pretty good about that. We sat down with the principals and everybody, Rebecca and again, and we had cut approximately $40,000 worth of stuff. We're not prepared to show that to you tonight because we wanted to get to this point. And then next week, if that's what you want us to do, we'll show you what that piece looks like as well. The other thing that we did is your last sheet is we looked at projected enrollments. Because our kindergarten enrollment continues to skyrocket, which has thrown a curveball at us. Just to show you how fast this thing is moving, I finished this up Monday morning with the principals. And by Monday night, 89 kids turned into 94 kids in kindergarten.
We can adjust that number. If you guys want to adjust that number on your sheet, just so you're aware, we're at 94 now for kindergarten enrollment.
94 now.
Yeah, so if you want to adjust that on your sheets.
So with 94 kindergarten students in March, I have to add a sixth teacher, at least budgetarily. Whether or not we end up going that route, we'll see. But historically, we've added at least 10 to 15 kids between now and the summertime. And you really can't have more than 17 or 18 kids in a kindergarten class. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah. Shouldn't have more than 15 kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kindergarten class.
Yeah, except for then you don't have enough classrooms if you divide.
So, the way we looked at this, or the way I look at this, is the $324,000 deficit. Add $75,000 to it, because we gotta add a kindergarten teacher. So that brought us to about a $400,000 deficit. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can go down and you can see the projections in the class sizes, or the averages.
22 kids. Isn't there the state, don't they have a recommendation of how many kids you're supposed to have?
They have maximums.
Okay, maximum,
Yeah.
right. And are we?
But those aren't reasonable sometimes.
They're large, they're very large.
Yeah, I
They're
think
very
they're like
large.
20.
Oh, are they?
And for a community like ours with so many needs, it's very difficult for our, I mean, our kids have a lot more needs than other communities, so the smaller the better.
The smaller, yes.
You know, the one that I'm most concerned about is the 4-5-6 ratio. It's the largest ratio on your page. Ken had asked for 2 teachers at that level, and that, you can see why he asked for them,
So-
based on that number.
So if you look at 4, 5, and 6, I don't have 3, 4, and 3. All of our 4, 5, and 6 teachers teach 4, 5, and 6. So we actually have 10 teachers teaching the combined of 4, 5, 6. So that's a better way to understand. You wouldn't divide 63 by 3. You would divide 228 kids by 10 classrooms.
Yeah, that's how they have it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
I changed it.
oh, I apologize.
I actually updated it. Ken, you didn't get an updated one?
No,
Look
I'm
at your
still
seat,
working-
you got, you're working off old news,
I'm
bud.
working off my notes, I apologize.
This is an evolving process.
There you go.
Thanks. Thanks, Dan.
There you go.
Pay no attention to the man behind the camera.
No, you're good.
So if I may
Thank you.
also, if, as what has occurred the past 2 years while I've been at Paul Smith School, if that occurs, our grade 1 numbers will go up to about 93. So we have a lot of kindergarten children who go to like Montessori schools or other places for kindergarten, and then they enroll for us for first grade. So that first grade number right now is, the kindergarten for this year is at 80. So if I take 15%, that's adding another 12 or 13 kids. So just, I just want to be transparent with the numbers, because this is what has happened.
I'm less concerned about that.
Yeah.
Tonight on March 1st.
Yeah.
We'll be more concerned when we have a little bit more data by May when we present. We also have the possibilities of doing multi-age down there like we've done in the past to deal with that, so you know how we've handled that in the past.
Yeah, this year
as
we
well.
have a combination.
Right, you have a combination, that's how we've handled it. But I do believe that we would be foolish not to budget for 6 kindergarten teachers. And obviously, the hiring of that 6th teacher would be dependent on what happens over the next few months. But by doing that, brings us to a $400,000 deficit.
And then taking this, the 175 off of
Take the
that,
175.
we're down to 225.
You get down to 225.
Okay.
The news that we got regarding the CPI, 2.3%, is another 100,000 for revenue, which brings us down to 125. The 40,000 or so of the other cuts that we can bring to you next week brings us to 85. If my math is right, 85.
Yes.
And what we discussed this morning was if we get the New Hampshire Charitable Fund grant for $75,000, we would use that to offset what we should put on hold right now would be the social studies teacher at the high school, which is the +1 on your sheet that you're looking at. So currently, right now, Carrie's asking for another social studies teacher. That's what the +1 is on that sheet for your class size sheet.
Oh, okay.
The one you were just looking at.
Oh,
So
I
if
see.
we
Yep.
put that on hold, in essence, cutting 75,000, and we will know about the Charitable Foundation later on this spring. Should that come in, we then shift the money back and hire the social studies teacher. If we don't get the charitable fund grant, we don't hire the new social studies teacher, and we keep it as status quo, which is what we already have this year. So it's not like we're dying right now with what we currently have. We would be definitely better served to have another teacher, but we're holding our own with what we currently have. We're not projecting a huge enrollment increase or anything like that. Carrie, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I have a staff member who's certified for math and social studies. So that person was able to, because we had 3 social studies positions, the kids need 3 full credits in social studies for their diploma. So that staff member has been able to teach social studies classes and math classes. So my social studies classes are running about 26, 28 students in the space. And it would be helpful if we could have that back. However, it's contingent, so we're making it work with what we have because we have that staff member who has both certifications. So it's working, we're making it work. Yeah.
I have a question
Mm-hmm.
on, you brought to the finance committee before, about guidance.
Guidance is in 2 at each school.
So we're gonna keep it like that? Okay.
We had a serious conversation
Yep.
about it this morning,
Yep.
and we found a way to do it.
Okay.
To keep them, and we all felt that that was what we needed to do, so
Okay.
that was a good conversation. Thanks for asking.
Yes, because I knew it was brought up.
Yeah, I
in
know, it
finance.
definitely came up, yeah.
Okay.
So that is the administration, or I should say my superintendent's recommendation at this point to put together a tax cap budget. And we will have the $40,000 worth of cuts that we did for you next week, as well as any other information that you wanna know.
So if we get the 75,000 from New Hampshire Charitable, that'll bring us down to about $15,000.
Yeah, well,
We'd be still looking for more.
Well, Jefferson, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that your estimate for the unreserved fund balance was conservative at
Yeah,
11,000.
we talked, and that $175,000 we're talking to would be added to that, so
Right,
we'll
that's
bring it up to
separate.
275.
So is this 100,000 based off of your current projections, or are you still being a little bit more conservative?
I'm still being conservative.
So potentially that 15,000 could be
It's gonna
there.
be
Yeah.
more.
We
It's
feel
gonna be a lot.
pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about it.
And of the,
I know
I'd
what
like to
you're
call
saying.
that $15,000 an error number, not
Yeah.
necessarily an error, but more of like a margin of error kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the potential is there.
and on the other thing, of the 241,000 that we haven't touched yet, that's still sitting there. And if we approve to go forward with spending $55,000 tonight, that puts it down to 186. Dan has presented to put 175 into the fund. That's still gonna leave another 11,000, and we could increase
You
from
could put-
175 to 186.
Yeah.
That would be it right there.
Just
almost.
so you know, we do have that 11,000 still to play with.
Is there a place to get drink of water?
Absolutely. Paul, right through here on the right, we have a water cooler.
Thank you.
Yeah, There's cups, right in the kitchen, cups are right in
The
the
coin
kitchen.
dispenser's right next to it.
I only got 50 cents on it.
You gotta have City Hall.
So, I guess, based upon what the superintendent has given us, I mean, there's some things I think we need to talk about right now, whether we wanna go forward with some of these items. Do we have the money available? I think it's important that we kinda talk and decide on it. I think I don't see any other way, but I'm gonna make the motion that we add a 6th Paul Smith School grade, kindergarten teacher at a projected cost of $75,770 to be added into the 2020-2021 budget.
Yes, second.
The motion's made second. Do I have a discussion?
That's a kindergarten.
That's kindergarten,
Kindergarten.
correct?
Which is, we already need,
Right. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Paul wasn't here for the vote.
Left the room.
That's true.
He excused himself.
You alright in there? Is he alright in there?
Oh, Maddie's in there.
This is live.
Dan, does the budget represent any change in staffing levels between this year and next year?
An increase. So you'd be increasing 2 teachers at the elementary school. Sorry, 3 teachers at the elementary school. And you added the 2 teachers at the middle school in November, and we would be keeping those. And then the high school, assuming we get the grant we talked about, add the social studies teacher, that would be added. So there would be no layoffs for the first time in 5 years since I've been here. Which is a good thing, obviously. And we would, you know, like I said, other than the 4, 5, 6, which is where I would throw my money if we had more money next, that's where I would put it towards, to reduce those numbers. But it does represent an increase in staff, actually.
What about TAs?
The only reduction would be the one we just talked about, the part-time VLAS person
Yeah.
here. And the existing TA that we moved from Sue's school to Gary's school. Is that,
Well, it was moved to the elementary school, but it was to replace an open position,
okay.
so
that would be
It
it.
that was not,
prepaid to PSS.
right.
And a school counselor that would be no longer half and half.
So that would be an
Right.
addition as
Adding
well.
a full
You think of
council.
that as an addition too, yeah,
So
the
we would
council.
no longer be sharing
From
counsel. we each
2/5 to
have
full-time, yeah.
Paul, while you stepped out of the room, I made a motion, it was seconded by Deb, to add a kindergarten teacher to the Paul Smith School within our 2020-2021 budget at a cost of $75,700, or $770, excuse me. It was unanimously approved.
Oh, sure.
Do you approve of this?
I approve it, but I couldn't find any cups by the water cooler.
Okay. I didn't want to
Otherwise, I would've been
exclude,
here.
I didn't want to exclude you, so you're in favor of it?
I'm in favor,
All
yeah.
right, thank you very much. So that motion passes and a 6th kindergarten teacher is added.
Do we have enough teachers' assistants for kids that really need it, on one-on-one who have problems?
I think we're vacant, we currently aren't fully staffed at this time. I'm gonna guesstimate 5 vacancies, I can pull out my data, but between the 3 buildings, we have 5 paraprofessional vacancies.
We just hired a few, though. I signed
We
a
did,
few.
but we're still, we
Lose
lost quite a
more
bit.
people since.
There's a shortage of workers, Cecile,
I think we were already.
so we have open positions, we just
Okay.
can't fill them.
Okay, and so we have the funds for these open
do.
positions?
Yes.
We do, we're just having trouble finding the bodies,
Okay.
yeah.
So we already have vacancies, we lost several.
If they continue to manage.
So it's gonna
Yeah.
hire our end of year fund balance, since we have them budgeted for this year.
They would.
So are we gonna be able to hold on to that money?
That would go into the fund balance, and then you would hope to roll that into next year.
Well, I don't know how this works, so that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's a good question, that's how it works.
Do we have any estimate of where we're at with that specific, those specific reserves?
In terms of how much you think that would go into the fund balance, Delaney, I would have to defer to Jefferson on that.
The last time I calculated it, we're about $490,000 as of right now, based on what we've received for revenues and what our current expenses and obligated or encumbered monies at the time. But there's still some things that we're still cleaning up, so that'll fluctuate going forward. And I try to, this is the time of the year where I start tracking it more, because as we get more revenues in, things like Medicaid, once Medicaid starts popping in, hopefully that'll improve the situation. But we also have other situations where we're making sure that we are encumbering enough money to cover special ed services or speech or OT services based on what we've been spending so far. so we might have to adjust purchase orders to reflect that. And then any other items that we're looking to do, such things as like the asbestos project and the, which obviously we have that 241 is included in that $490,000 number right now. Obviously, if we are gonna take some of that money, like $55,000 to the asbestos project and the entryway project at the middle school, that'll reduce that right there by $55,000, so.
So we could potentially hit the tax cap budget and still have a little cushion
And
going
have
towards
some
the end of
options.
the year to do some things we talked about in October, November.
Yep. Or perhaps look at staff
Yeah.
and do some more, once we know definitively that we have the funds.
Yeah, the biggest challenge of it obviously is it gets very close to the end of the year before we really know how tight that number really is going to be.
So do you think in June that you would be at our board meeting in June, then we could decide if we want to take any of that money doing those things, or, I mean, in, for staffing, or putting it into a capital reserve?
Yes.
That would make sense, yeah.
All right, well, as was mentioned, the asbestos and the entryway projects, I'd like to make a motion to place the Paul Smith School asbestos project and the Franklin Middle School entryway redesign into this year's budget for a total of $55,000.
Second.
Okay, so a motion's been made by Jeff to appropriate the money necessary for the Paul Smith School's asbestos cafeteria storage at a cost of $20,000. Franklin Middle School entryway redesign at a cost of $35,000. That'll be appropriated out of this year's current budget. It was seconded by Chris. Do I have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it.
I do have a question, I just thought of. On the middle school project, do we have a design, who's doing the design for how that's gonna be redone?
So we have a quote from Porter Paving on the entryway project at the middle school.
But if you're doing landscaping, they do landscaping too?
There'll be
You've got
very
th-
little.
You've got 3 competitive quotes or bids, you're gonna put it out to bid?
Well, yeah, we're gonna go
Yes,
through
we're
that
gonna put
process.
out-
Okay.
Yeah, we just did the initial estimates.
Now,
Okay.
is that gonna include drainage in
Yes, we
Okay.
will work, it's all gonna be ripped up and start over,
Ah.
was the original estimate, how we looked at it.
Yeah, the nice thing about that redesign is if you do the grass, your grass area can
Absorbs
be
the
your
water,
drainage
sure,
and can
yeah.
absorb all
Oh, yeah.
that, which right now we have obviously little dips and stuff that are collecting the water and then freezing and causing
Yeah.
those slick surfaces.
Probably have a dry well in there to collect the water and then just have it seep out and then it collects.
Yeah, I did talk to him about that, and we were talking about the runoffs and such, so like I said, it was a quick estimate, just to get a number per se.
Ballpark.
Yeah. But yeah, that was talked about.
And definitely this is, because Toby and I have talked about this at length also on numerous occasions up there. And this is gonna save him a lot of work on different things when he's taking care of the front of the school and stuff and man hours and stuff like that.
And safety
So-
as well.
And I think,
Yeah,
I think
it's
Toby's
icy,
gonna,
yeah,
I
that's
think
not
Toby's
good.
also, you're gonna try to do some of the work if you have the availability to kind of do
Didn't
some
Yeah,
of the
the
stuff.
the grass work we
Yeah.
could do.
Yeah, the grass work, Toby and his crew will end up doing up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll save some money for us too, so.
Can I ask a question about the, Paul Smith English supplies, reduced, I mean, $4,427.50. What is that for? I mean, what's being?
So that's another classroom set of resources, because our second grade is large, and so we only had we only had one set, and we were sharing it between 3 teachers, so if we have 4 teachers, we need 2 sets.
Okay, but, yes, but it's taken out of here.
Right, we're hoping that either through the reallocation monies or things like that, we'll be able to purchase it. So we'll look at our title funds.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we get, usually around this time of the year, the Department of Education does Title I and Title II reallocation grants based on extra money that they have available at the state level, and then they let the school districts throughout the state know that there's applications available now for people to apply to use those funds for things like that. And so we're just waiting to hear from the state.
So
I
what
actually called
happens
them
if we
today.
don't, they just don't have them, that's all?
Say that again?
I says, if you don't get the money from the state, does that mean that school is gonna be without it?
Yeah.
And what grade is that again?
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't
What,
hear.
what grade is?
Second.
Second grade. That can't come out of, well, that's a possibility of putting it back in though, right, because of, at the end. Okay.
And what about the reading books being taken out of this year's budget?
Yeah.
The 6,200, do you think there's a way that could happen?
Yeah.
The thought was is only if we were gonna have a teacher really, so, I mean, remember that we have our frozen budget,
Yeah.
so I just want us to be cautious. You know, I know it's not a lot of money, but all of a sudden, those things start to add up, they really do. And special ed is such a question mark. We have some students that are on the verge of being outplaced, guys, so.
My
If
understanding.
that happens, this money then Jefferson knows this money will disappear very quickly if that happens, so.
Yeah, I realize.
And I believe during finance, that's what we spoke about, if I remember right,
Yeah.
that was taken out because of the second grade teachers, had been eliminated.
At this point,
Through the
You have
superintendent's.
to remember, at this
cuts.
point, we're still at $400,000
And that's what I'm thinking.
deficit.
Yeah.
A lot of ifs
Yeah.
Yeah.
have to happen to get it square.
So, you wouldn't want to even go over like 1/10 of a percent over the budget cap to get this?
My view on that is it's financial suicide. Okay?
Alright.
The city just approved 3 collective bargaining agreements for us.
That's true, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Granted, we saved money on the first 2 years on the support staff and custodians, okay? But the first year of the teacher's contract is $248,000 extra that was added into our budget, okay?
Okay.
And one of the things is they wanted to know, were we comfortable sustaining that? And we were.
Okay.
Okay? If we go in with a budget that's $400,000 or $500,000 or whatever over.
No, I'm not,
No, I'm just saying
talking- I'm
anything
not-
over, they're gonna wanna know why.
I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, I know, Chris will.
Okay.
Because they're gonna wanna know why are we not at a tax cap budget when we said we could sustain the contracts, okay? So, and the fact that the state has increased our funding.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Alright.
based upon that, they're not, the city is, I can guarantee, is not gonna give us more than what is available to us, okay? Even though CPI came in at 2.3, which is the highest it's been, okay? And Jefferson's anticipating
What's CPI?
central,
Consumer price index,
Consumer
it's
price
index.
a
Okay.
national
Okay.
number
Yeah.
based on.
so based on those numbers, when the city
Yeah,
manager
that's
gave that
tax
out
taxes based on
last
CPI,
night,
so we actually can't
Jefferson
raise
did the numbers out, and that's where he came up with about $100,000 more that will be allowed to
So
us
that was $100,000.
Okay.
for money from the city,
Okay.
okay? And I think with us sustaining the staffing,
Yeah, because it's basically this.
and everything else, the teachers' contracts, and not losing any staffing, and coming in with that tax cap budget, we're gonna show fiscal responsibility on our part. And like Dan said, we're gonna be able to show for the first time in 5 years that we're not gonna lose any staff. We're not gonna cut any staff, and that's something that's huge with the city council. It was brought up after the budget was passed last night. That was one of the things that was brought up. So and it's just my opinion, I know Chris has a different opinion, and I'll let him talk about it, but with me, I've been pushing for this because I just think it'd be fiscal suicide
Would
on
we
our
be
part.
able to get grants for these books? For those supplies?
Well,
Is that
I mean,
is
some
that
of this
not-
could still come out later on,
Yeah, okay,
depending on where our numbers come in at.
This is only the beginning,
Right.
this is only the first round.
okay,
We have a long way to.
okay, okay.
But I'll let,
This will be discussed every single month
Yeah.
in June.
well, I'll let Chris, I mean, cause you, I
Yeah.
want you to respond
So-
to how you feel.
So essentially they're saying they don't wanna ask the city for any additional money. It is of my opinion that the city doesn't, the split between the city and the school, it isn't quite even enough. The current situation that we're in, I do feel that the city does share some liability. So when you come down to, we just asked them to approve the 3 contracts. To me, we have professional teachers here, they're professionals. They're already behind the pay scale compared to the rest of, most schools, we're $15,000 behind on average. I do feel that the city should pick up the tab, at least on that portion, share some of that liability. Without them, essentially what you're asking to do is to say, who's gonna take the loss here? Are we gonna ask our teachers to go without raises? I don't think any professional in the school is gonna accept that and not go somewhere else. So, that's just my opinion. We can approve a budget above what our tax cap is, and essentially ask for
And
them
what
to carry
is,
some of it.
what are we getting, say, for $1? How many cents are we getting on the dollar from the city?
35.
What?
35 cents.
35.
We're the
Oh
only
my
city
God,
in
that's
the-
disgusting.
We're the only city in the state that's below 50%. We're kind of inverted in the way that
Right.
taxes are distributed in the city. And
35 cents?
their rationale is that we get a higher percentage of funding for our special ed and things like that because we have a higher, it's all semantics really, but I mean,
Cause most districts throughout the state, even if they're not a city, your
Oh, I
school
know.
budgets are a lot higher than
Oh, I know, I
your
come from
city.
Derry,
Yeah.
and believe me, all our money went to the schools, and that's why we moved there umpteen years ago, because the schools were there,
So,
so.
so with that case, I would make the argument that we should continue to ask for a larger portion of the share.
Shame on them. Oh my God, that's disgusting.
Well, it really isn't that way, but it's that way.
It's not that way, but that's that way,
But
that's
it's not.
that's
Yeah,
disgusting.
that's terrible accounting.
Which would have been part of the discussion had we been meeting on Thursday.
We had been meeting on Thursday.
We were scheduled to all meet with
Right.
city council on
Which that
Thursday.
would
Oh,
be-
that's right, that's
There's a
right.
lead-in to find out why we're not.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, Tony messaged me this morning to the reason, but
Oh, he did,
he
okay.
did, yeah.
We'll let Tim speak to that when we get to it.
That's why I'm not gonna say it.
I mean, I think you can do both, guys, honestly. I think you can present a tax cap budget, recognizing where we're at, with the extra state money, but continue to advocate for the fact that you believe you should be getting a bigger piece of the pie. I mean, I think you can do both. I don't think you have, one is exclusive of the other.
Right. And I
Oh.
think that it's important to, if we're going to make that case that we need more money, we need to be very specific on what we're asking for and why we're asking for it.
Yes,
We
I
need to
agree.
present that, we need to present that value.
Yes, I agree. Definitely.
I think one of the bigger things too is special ed costs. Showing that we're reducing all of these numbers out of our budget that could come back to us and we have to go to the city and say, okay, we had a tax cap, but now we have a deficit of
Yeah, right.
$300,000 for special ed, where are you gonna get the money for us? I mean, those are the things that could happen
Mm.
and would happen if
I
that
think you
was the
should,
case.
come to the council meeting and put it on TV.
Well, I think it's important, Deb, that we articulate that in our presentation.
Yeah.
You know, just like we've done here tonight, we tell the story of, we're rolling the dice in several different areas here. so they're aware
Which
of.
we did last year.
And we did the same thing last year, right? I think we need to do that, so they're aware. You know.
But don't they realize that by giving, well, isn't it in Joe's letter of questions that she wants answered, is why the teachers keep moving along? Don't they realize that that is because of the pay scale is low, and they'll get trained here and they'll move on?
So the easy solution is just to simply add $1,000 to everybody's tax bill. Period. Now, see how far you get with that.
Yeah, but no, I don't
Every
think,
liberal-
I don't think that's fair,
Yeah, you
because
watch it.
if you're only getting, if the school is only getting 35 cents to the dollar, I mean, don't they have any pride whatsoever in the schools and what they're trying, they're saying that, yeah, we're going places, yeah, well, you're not gonna go any places if you don't have your kids educated, and they're gonna leave.
We'll just add $1,000 to your tax bill.
So,
Problem solved.
the other option is for them to reduce spending on their side, which would have been a nice, topic of discussion when we met on, if we had the opportunity to meet with them on Thursday. Hopefully, we still have the opportunity, so we can understand their financial position, they can
That would
understand
be
our
good,
financial
we should
position.
have a,
I'll talk about that more after.
A few minutes, yeah. So what I need to ask of you is what you want from us for next Tuesday's meeting, if any.
can you just send to us all these little calculations that you said for the, you know, from the $400 or $241,000 and whatever, that scenario of where this money's going, and then you're adding this and
A summary of
175,
kind
yeah,
of what
that,
we just
yeah,
talked about.
yeah,
Maybe
that would be good for me,
Sure.
so that way I have a better understanding,
We can do that.
yeah, cause I wasn't able to keep up.
Just the stuff we were talking about.
I'm a very visual person.
And I still feel that, you know, adding and subtracting the stuff that we've appropriated for tonight, the kindergarten teacher.
Summary.
All those numbers, but I still feel, I personally still feel that we need to see, what the tax cap budget is.
So it'll be what we just discussed
But yeah,
with the $40,000 that you haven't seen yet. Yeah, that's what we'll do.
And that's what I think you need to put together,
Okay.
is that there, with what you say, without, you know, without 40,000, we haven't seen.
Sure.
So you'll make those, but I think that's what at our next meeting we should get is what that budget looks like.
Do you have a general summation of what those $40,000,
It's all stuff.
just, I
Yeah.
mean, supplies and things like
Yeah,
that?
it wasn't personnel, I don't believe.
And it was all throughout the budget?
It was all through,
All
we all sat
categories?
and nickel and dimed everywhere we could. But we have it specifically, we didn't put it together yet, cause we hadn't even talked to finance about it or anything yet.
Right.
That's at the end of the budget, right? Is that the stuff you're talking about?
No, it hasn't.
No, this is
Oh, it
something
hasn't
that
been done.
you haven't seen it.
Oh,
We
okay.
haven't seen
Oh,
it.
You haven't seen it yet.
We'll present it next week.
We'll bring it next week, so you'll know what it is.
Well, I feel we ought to definitely present a tax cap budget, and that be the budget we submit to the city. I plead guilty, because I made the motion to approve the above tax cap budget for 2018 and 2017 and 2018. And I feel, in hindsight, that was very deceitful of, I'll take the blame. That was very deceitful of me to make a motion to present in a budget above the tax cap. That was just simply incorrect and improper. And for us to continue to do that is financial suicide. The school is on the cusp of, what did I say, upset taxpayers. Hit the taxpayers with a $500 tax increase.
Nobody's suggesting that.
Well, nobody is suggesting that. However, either the state gives us the money, or we deal with what we have.
I mean, we're in a lot better shape than we were a year ago, 2 years ago,
Right.
3 years ago, 4 years ago,
Definitely.
5 years ago. So that state money, which we've been fighting for a long time, has put us very close to where we need to be, so.
And the stabilization part that is put back into play is a permanent placement. That's not gonna go away after the biennial. That is a law that was passed, and we went back to the stabilization levels of 2012. Okay, that is not gonna change. We are no longer gonna lose that 4%. That is a permanent money that we're now gonna get. And depending on where the adequacy report comes out, okay, there is a adequacy committee that has been formed out at the State House that have been meeting on Mondays. They've been given an extension due to the overlap of when the budget was signed, so they've been given an extension to come out with a final report. So there is the possibility that, you know, there could be some changes in the adequacy formula. So,
anything, but yeah.
right.
Yeah, I actually visited one when I was down there on Friday, and they are going over every single revenue stream possible to any school to see if they can up it or
At least keep it the same.
Right, or, you know, if this is gonna go down, then we gotta increase it, those kind of things, so they're looking at everything.
But we are guaranteed this additional money that we received in this past budget, it'll continue in years to come, because stabilization has now been put back to the 2012 level.
And they do wanna go after the feds for special education.
Well, they make the rules and regulations and they don't find it.
Yes.
All right, so, all right, so that's what Dan's gonna come back with for next week. Budget on this now.
Yes, let's move on to the maintenance report. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Toby.
yeah, so there's a handout there, kind of runs down what, monies that was awarded to us in this year's budget, what we've done. Big projects with the awarded money was the flooring, the floor tile for the high school. Still working on getting bids for that, I've got 2 so far, which this last one came in a lot better than expected, so hopefully we are headed in the right direction there for this summer.
Are you saying bids or quotes?
Well, quotes,
They're two
I'm
different
sorry.
things.
Yeah, quotes, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that 52,000 floor tiles, that's for the high school. Is that correct?
We allocated $52,000 of the additional funding towards repairing of the floor tiles in the hallways and rooms here at the high school.
Right. Okay,
Um,
that's
That was based off of an initial quote. We have gotten a subsequent quote that was significantly less, so that would help us out in that area.
It's similar to that Entryway project where we came up with, we knew we were getting some of that money allocated in October, quickly had to get some numbers to go by, so these are just quick estimates right off what we were budgeting per se, so now we could go ahead and do the bidding and, or get some bids and finalize it.
Yeah, get some real numbers.
So the same thing with the door locks for both the high school and the middle school. Middle school is gonna be a little easier. Those door locks are kinda antiquated, not antiquated, but they're outdated to the point we can't get hardware for them anymore. But at least the building's new enough, the doors don't need a lot of work, and we can do one standard lock set, and it makes it easier to quote and a little less laborious. The high school will be different, because honestly, between the 3 sections, there's very few doors the same. Some are so antiquated that I think we're gonna get into door replacement, so that, yeah, that's gonna.
And that's not cheap.
I mean, I went through with a contractor yesterday, and we can plate doors to get by for the security, Homeland Security portion, but these doors still have single pane glass in them, which I don't know if the fire department, I mean, I don't know if they're gonna be allowed to even be used, so we're gonna, this building's only a project, so, the good thing was, when I was going through with them, it looks like, I thought we were gonna have to do frames and doors, doors. Looks like the frames we can work with, so that'll probably save probably half that cost. It's gonna be pretty large.
One of the things I wanted to mention also about these door locks at the middle school and the high school here, and the doors obviously at the high school, is we have a infrastructure security grant that we were awarded by the state, which runs through the end of December 2020, and any of the cost of these projects, 80% of those are covered by that grant. So that helps us in that regard, because that was part of the big issues of being awarded these particular grants was the security improvements and interior doors, classroom doors and things like that are a big component of that piece, so.
But we have a timeline.
Well, right, it has to be, the projects have to be completed by next December, so
That'd be tough.
that could be the challenge, so
Yeah.
we'll have to see how we move with that.
Dumpsters we're gonna take care of for enough years.
Are they back up and picking up?
They are back,
They
yes.
are.
They
I was
came,
just
they
gonna ask
started
that.
probably about a month and a half ago. At that time, I actually helped Spencer one day, everybody, that was one of the days we had early release and he had no help, so I went out and helped them dump them, and, we originally had just the middle school needing a dumpster. This one here is just bad. When it was in the air, I was like, yeah, so I'm going to, we were allocated the money for one brand new one. I've been talking to them, and I think I'm gonna try and get 2 used ones or refurbished ones for the price of that one, and that way I can get both schools.
And where do you get them through?
He was, I'll check with Casella's, they run out of Belmont. Spencer was telling me that, he saw a lot of dumpsters on there, so he thought they might be refurbishing them down there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take a trip down and, see if they'll resale, or I'm sure somebody in the area.
I know there's a company in Ware that, makes them, so I don't know, you know.
Oh, they make them?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll, see if I can find out the name for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'll
if you just want
send
to
it to
email that stuff
Jefferson.
over to me,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
The F-350 tires, basically with the dump runs and the sanding, and we went right into winter with the dump runs. I couldn't take that truck off the road, so, we're now finally getting to the point that with the season and the trash being picked up, that I can take it off. This month will be inspection month anyway, so I plan on having those tires and the alignment done.
Who does your inspections, Toby? Are you taking it somewhere local, or have you talked to the city highway whether they would do the inspections for us?
I've gotta look into it, actually. I didn't do the inspections last year.
Yeah, I think
so-
Bill Hamilton did, but he's no longer, his business is closed down, you know.
Well, that's actually where I went today for oil changes, so I can.
Yeah, it's under a new name,
Yeah,
I
it's
can't.
Lucky's.
Lucky's, thank
Yep.
you.
They
But
did.
I'm just wondering if maybe you know, because the city does, the municipal service department does do like the cruises, the fire department, their own trucks.
Okay.
So I don't know if they'd be willing to inspect our vehicles, where there's just a few, you know, there's only a few of them that we would need. I think there's what, 3 of them that we'd have to have done,
Yeah, that's true.
so I don't know if you.
that last year?
Huh?
Why couldn't you have told us that last year?
Isn't they, I think it passes.
I mean, we'd still be responsible for anything they had.
You're right,
done.
yeah.
But if you, I would just reach out to the
So
city.
where's it, right over at the,
They do it right at the municipal service garage.
garage?
Yeah, down at the, down out back there, they have their own maintenance division.
Yep.
I'm sure Jerry knows those guys.
And
Yeah.
I know, they do work for me for the Franklin Cemetery with our lawnmowers and stuff like that, so.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
sure, I can't see why they wouldn't be able to help us out. I mean, they'd bill us,
Yeah, that's fine.
you know, but,
Just trying to get it.
they do all the other city vehicles, so I would just kinda look into it and see what they say. If they say no, then
Yeah.
we'll go somewhere else, but at least if we ask them.
Yep, they've been real receptive on
Right.
when I asked, so, yeah, they've been good.
All right.
I think one thing I wanna sort of mention at this point too is that, with Toby and our staff, the maintenance and facilities departments, the relationship between the city and the school district has improved greatly too. With interacting with those guys, they've been very helpful. The city's been very helpful with us as far as our ability to get sand during the winter time and early morning hours and stuff like that. And that whole situation has certainly improved quite a bit. That's one thing that's been nice to see. Obviously, as Toby talked about Spencer with the garbage and dealing with that, their issue with trying to get that truck fixed.
Right. And they're still talking about outsourcing.
Oh, yeah.
They had a discussion on at Monday night's city council meeting.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a financial.
So it's still an issue that they're still discussing, but for now, we'll continue doing what we're doing, but.
That's why I was hesitant on doing anything with a dumpster on top of, because if we do have to go to a private or another source, we're gonna have to lease their dumpsters. They're not probably gonna let us use ours, I'm guessing. So, yeah, I just hate to buy something and all of a sudden have it sit there.
Yeah, but with the conditions of it, and it's not really, I mean, they're still having the meetings through the municipal service
Yeah.
Committee.
Yeah.
Through the city and whatnot. You know, I think because of the conditions that we kinda have
Yeah,
to,
we're trying to
sanitary
get-
purposes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a liability issue for us too, if they break, because we own them.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, I mean, we'll keep up with it, you know, at city council meetings, and Scott Clarebeck, Councilman Clarebeck sits on that committee.
Yeah.
You know, we can reach out to him if need be and find out what's going on, if we have questions, but I still think it's important. to
Yeah, I
purchase
think
them
we're
now.
gonna go forward right
Yeah.
now to buy, yeah, it was more or less, I didn't wanna buy when we were hauling our own.
Right.
But, yeah. I did buy a new scrubber for the middle school, and, they're much happier with that, we got a size that they can use in classrooms and such, so, it works out pretty good. Between Dan and Jerry, we rebuilt that sander this year, no breakdowns, which last year that was a weekly thing,
That was
so.
constantly breaking down on us.
Yep, so that's in good shape. We bought a sand sweeper, which will benefit mostly the middle school once we get it housed up there. Yeah, that'll be a big asset anyway, with all the sand we use in the spring. Actually, Jerry's been trying it out right now in between. That, people don't see, but that'll actually save a lot of the custodian, because all that dirt ends up in the building, so it snowballs, so people don't think that's a big item, but it really is. I did get new tools, some tools that were needed for the, maintenance shop, so we're, not short-handed there than we were. Then there's a couple items there, as you can see, that still need to be dealt with.
Yeah, and Toby and I will go through this list and see where we are too, and our needs and all that stuff, so we don't necessarily have to go through every single one. But if you have any questions, certainly reach out to us and let us know on anything that's on the list.
Do you anticipate, Jefferson, that this stuff will be bought?
I think a good portion of it will be
Prior to the
bought, yeah. Some of the stuff wasn't actually necessarily needed, that we were able to reallocate to help cover certain other pieces too. And some of these estimates might be a little bit high on a couple of these items too, so our ability to purchase them is actually easier than what these numbers necessarily represent. The amount that was actually on here would be the amount that was actually budgeted, but I think we might be able to find better prices on some of these things now, so that'll improve our ability to get those taken care of.
Are we holding off on the floor entries and mats and stuff due to the winter season? Is that why we're holding off on that?
No, actually, in all honesty, it's time. I
Okay.
just hadn't gotten, yeah, that's all me. Yeah, I should've had those purchased by now. I just ran out of time.
But now we're gonna kinda wait till the winter season gets done, so we're not.
Yeah, and actually, here again on that one, Ms. Blair's might have found a source where we could save a lot of money there too, so that's another thing that we're looking at. Yes.
All right.
What's the burner, sir?
That's a type of polisher, just a different RPM, it's different,
Okay, so
but
it's
it's
a
like
floor
an
polisher?
yeah, it's an
Oh,
orbital,
okay.
yeah, yep. Yeah, a couple of two of our schools, they're probably dated in the seventies or sixties what we're using, so. Yeah, and it's one of those things, I don't wanna buy them till we go through them and make sure it's a last ditch effort that I have to buy one. So that's the reason some of the equipment in there's a wet dry bag, same thing, it's like, you know, make sure, I'm saying to Dan, make sure, go through it, you know, do we rebuild it, or do we have to buy it, so. Some of those are delayed because of that too. Custodians, back to, yeah, I'd like to see a full staff someday, but, we're living with what we got, and thank everybody for your patience for dealing with us.
And a custodial situation similar to the teaching assistant situation. It's challenging to find individuals sometimes, and they don't work out reliably.
Is it the wage, or is it just no people?
It can be a combination of both. I mean, our unemployment rate in the state
Oh, I know it's
is low, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, everybody talks about how great low unemployment is. Problem is, you have no labor pool then, and so you don't have any, there's nobody out there. The people that are out there are not necessarily the ones you want to fill these positions with, and we've had that issue. I mean, especially with the custodial positions. We've gone through 3 or 4 individuals that, you know, got them, tried them out, and whatever, and for some reason or another, it just didn't work out. And, we had to separate the services, so. And we're gonna be going through that again too, so we just have to see what we can get. I think we do pretty well wage-wise. I've been looking at what other schools have been offering for some of the schools in the southern part of the state, and I'm like, I don't see how they're gonna get anybody for those positions at that rate either, so. Just because there is such low unemployment, that those people that are looking for those jobs are not the people that are out there right now, so.
I do have a question, has the washers been installed, the plumbing done for the, washers for the high school?
So we are working on that.
Oh, no kidding.
We've gotten some disparate quotes on that. We just got one from the guy that installed our hot water heater at the cafeteria here at the high school. Cost of that was just under $7,000 to install plumbing for those washers and dryers and putting in a vent hose on that. So, and we just got that, so we have to go look, and we got a quote from Rouse, and I think we want to take a look at that and see, because I think it was significantly less. If that's the case, I'm gonna go probably with that one.
Yeah, the original time, we thought they were outrageous, and this one was like almost double theirs.
Well, because they have work, that's
Yeah, but yeah, to hook up 2 washers, dryers is like $3,000, this one was $6,000. Yeah.
So we'll be moving forward with that very soon.
Yeah, so back to custodians, I'm trying different at the, like at the middle school, trying some different, cleaning priorities to see if, you know, we can get better results, just different formulas with different people, so, so yeah, working with what we have. As far as, and then Jerry is covered, and this is something people don't realize, you know, Jerry's filling in a lot with the maintenance and such, but the big thing is, at least once a week, one of my day custodians is calling out, and when I have to have, the only backup I have is maintenance, and when I was in maintenance, it was me covering, and, that just takes away any work you're gonna get done. You do that, you know, the 5th of the week, and it ends up adding up, so Jerry's been filling that gap graciously. It's working out big. Like this week right now, I really have no night crew for the high school at all. And, so he's doubling up during the day, trying to do night shift during the day, so. So we're trying to make do there. Maintenance wise of Dan, he's been busy over the winter. We had an onslaught of inspections in December between the DOE and the fire department and the health inspector and I think sprinklers, so, and then we had a deadline by February to have all these issues sent down, back to these people. The fire department came through, did re-inspections. Department of Education wanted photos of, say, 30 repairs sent to them by February, so we had to get all over that. And in that time, I think Dan replaced over 25 emergency lights. He's installed last fountain at Paul Smith last week. The septic pump in the IT building went down on us, and he did that repair, so we didn't have to pay a plumber for that. Garbage disposal in the middle school, which saved a Hobart trip. Sink drains. Been working on vehicles with Kubota tractor. We bought a snowblower for the Kubota tractor this winter, so he's been fabricating some stuff to make that work with a cab, which we saved about $3,000 on having to put hydraulics in. He rebuilt the front end of the tractor, adjusted hydraulics. He's installed a couple doors, fire doors up at middle school. We had a sewer issue up at Paul Smith. One of our main lines going out the northwest side is broke. It's fragmented, so it can't, the toilets are backing up, but thankfully where it's broke, it's coming off of 2 private bathrooms, which we've decided that aren't needed, so we're gonna make those into storage units. And then, but I need that drained for my boiler room emergency overflow, so we still can use it for the water, so that worked out.
One thing I wanted to interject here too is a lot of things that, the nice thing is with the fact that we were able to hire, we had Jerry always, but be able to bring him up to full time, and then Dan that we were able to hire to be our new maintenance person. For the two of them, they've been able to do a lot of addressing of maintenance and repairs of things that have been ignored for many years throughout the district, and we've been able to start making gains on bringing that stuff up to current and also tracking it so that we know when equipment has been repaired and replaced. And so that's been one of the things that Toby's been really focusing on, is getting a lot of that information put together and getting a lot of maintenance items that haven't been addressed in quite a long time addressed. So obviously doing that can also create a lot of surprises or unanticipated scenarios, and we've just been trying to work through them, and having individuals like Dan and Jerry that have been able to tackle it has probably saved us a lot of money that we didn't have to shell out to have a contractor come in and do themselves too. So I just want to point that out, that our ability to take care of that issue that the district has had on its plate for quite a while has improved greatly.
Just an example of that, the Kubota tractor, the front axle, last year I did half the front end, and the bearings are gone, and I called in the tractor, and it was gonna be $1,000 minimum, just get it over there and do that one side, and I did it in-house for $150, and so Dan just did the other side, so say we got $300 in the front end, it would've been over 2,000, so. Crazy. So on my end, I've been dealing with contractors daily, a lot of it with the heat issues still, with E&E. We're getting there, I think. We're we're getting there.
I saw 3 of them here over vacation.
But they, honestly, we've gotten to the point, I've got the people I need and that we can get along and get we're productive when we're getting together now, and we're popping off some stuff. And Paul Smith, I mean, granted, we got a bearing issue and we got a contact issue, but we're down to like just 3 actuators in that school, and I think we're got everything running. I can actually control that school. Here, we're 4 rooms away from having complete control. I mean, here again, we got insufficient air handlers, but at least I got them running now. I can control them. On a 20 below 0 day, I can control heat most of it, so it's good. Middle school, we've had a lot of issues that couldn't really nail down, and that's what we were doing this last week, is we were hammering up there and found a lot of programming issues, bad valves. So that was probably the worst school, and we're at 95% now. He's actually rewiring the hood, so the kitchen could finally get some heat, and I think within a few weeks, we should be in good shape.
What's the time for more warm
Yeah, I was
weather?
gonna say, right before April.
Can I ask a question on the last page, you have exhaust fans that
Yes.
were excluded. How did that get missed?
That, I looked at the contract, they weren't in the contract at all, the initial contract. I think, I honestly, I wasn't here, Toby wasn't here, so we don't know what the discussions were with the contractor at the time, and what they were aware of as far as exhaust fans that existed in the buildings and putting them on the system. They probably should have been, and in retrospect, it's not much we can do about that. Right now, we just gotta address it going forward, and get those running as best as we can get them at this point.
What's one unit roughly? Just a guesstimate, I'm not.
Well, that's, as a matter of fact, I was at the show last week, and I was talking to Dawn, who is now our account manager. And middle school is our newest school, so I thought that was, at least I could plug and play new units. And he said, all those units are no longer available, so. But to me, it's a fan blower. As I told him, I said, it's not a big design there. I said, just get me a fan to fit. So we're actually having to figure out what is gonna work in these units. Yeah, I'd hate to even throw out a number without knowing if they gotta put new housings down to a new unit compared to just a motor. But he's supposed to be getting back to me, but the discussion was this Thursday down there. He says he's got in touch with the companies, the makers, trying to get the right CFMs, and then he's gonna get back to me. So, like I said, I throw a number out, I'll be in trouble. I will,
Thank you.
yeah, once I find out, you'll be the first to know.
Sounds great, thank you.
All good? Say.
We can.
Yeah, if you have any.
Yeah, we can read, yeah, we can read the rest of it.
Yeah.
Nice to have somebody so
Throw as many
diligent, though. Thank you, Toby.
They are not, what you do, I should have copies.
Did you never get one?
So,
You can have mine.
Getting past my bedtime, we got anything else you
yeah,
got coming up?
before we leave, I got one thing. We had a meeting scheduled for a Thursday night with the city council.
Yeah. Tony messaged me this morning.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The city it ran into some computer issues, we'll say, where they're still working without a computer throughout the city. So they have been working with this. It's being investigated by both local, state, and federal authorities. But because of this, they haven't really had the opportunity to go forward with it. And the other thing is Tony reached out to me a little over a week ago. Some city councilors felt that they wanted a facilitator for this meeting.
I thought we were getting one.
Well, there was talk, but
Apparently we're not all adults.
we were gonna try to do it without having the need one. But anyways, some city councilors, as Tony said to me, felt that, they wanted a facilitator. I said I didn't have a problem with it, that gave an opportunity for Tony and I just to kind of sit back and whatnot. So, Tony had, the city manager reach out to Primex. Primex has declined to facilitate this.
Really?
Yes, they have, because Primex works for both the city and the school. So they have declined to facilitate this meeting. They have given us, or they have given the city some other means to get a facilitator, but obviously that is gonna entail money costs. So, Tony asked if we could postpone this until a later date, and he will let me know, once he has a price also of what it will cost, for a split for a facilitator between the city and the school.
Well, they get,
You're
we
telling
only
me
get 35 cents to the dollar,
18 grown
so.
adults cannot sit and
I
have a
think we
conversation
could.
in a room?
And I told Tony, I didn't, if that's what they wanted.
I'll have a few people over to my house. How about that? Those who like to attend can attend.
Yeah.
Well, have some punch, maybe. that-
But so Tony asked me Monday night if we could postpone it, so.
Yeah, but how long is it gonna be postponed?
Indefinitely.
That'll be a decision of the city. I've told him, I made it clear to him, I wanted to have this meeting still, and he told me he would be in contact with me.
Address the response to Joe's.
Oh, are we gonna do
Questions,
that today, or was that for the next meeting? Joe Brown's,
The question that she recently came out with,
oh, she has a new one?
or the one that,
The response that I gave you at the last meeting,
That
take
is
a
for
look
the
at
school.
for us to talk about. We can do it tonight, or we can do it next Tuesday.
I didn't bring mine.
If you haven't had a
actually, I
chance to-
think it's an item that ought to be on the agenda at the school board.
You wanna wait till then?
Yeah, that's actually a school board, I should be at a school board meeting. Yeah.
This is a school board meeting, right?
Yeah, but it's a budget workshop, and I just
The
feel
workshops
it's,
versus
Yeah,
where we're at.
Right.
I would rather put it on the agenda so it's out there for everybody.
Can
Great
we,
idea.
can we
Okay.
email our comments beforehand, or to be considered, or is that all
You-
gonna be
you
done
can-
that
You
night?
shouldn't do that.
No,
No,
I don't
okay,
think that's smart to do.
no,
okay.
Now, if you have, I mean, if they
Bring them
wanted
to the meeting.
yeah.
or if they wanted to email you, would you rather just?
I'd rather we wait.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would rather
all right.
we wait and do it at a meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll wait, we'll put it on the agenda, the superintendent and I will be setting the agenda next week, so we'll put it on the agenda, bring it forward. Because Joe Brown has asked another question, and
What was the other
it dealt-
question?
What's
it dealt
that
with-
question?
It dealt with assessment, our assessment meeting,
Oh, yeah.
asking about the results, and we're gonna talk about that, of what
Well, she
what
should've showed
routes
it.
we're gonna be taking.
Why didn't you
Camera
come?
running? She should have showed up.
So,
I'll set it, not me.
yeah,
Yeah.
Camera is running and someone is watching.
Oh, good, probably Joe.
are there any other budgetary questions anybody needs answered? Everybody all set? Okay, next Wednesday night, same time, 6 o'clock here at the SAU. Or next
Tuesday.
Tuesday, don't worry about it, I get my
Monday-
dates mixed up.
Monday is.
Jefferson did such a great job, there was really no reason for me to show up.
Finance is Monday, and I
So
You-
Tuesday night, so.
What do you always
Review
change
and-
different nights?
Yeah, just,
Your
you know.
finance?
We do
So
that.
ended it yet?
Board meeting.
What's that?
I don't
know.
Second, motion to adjourn, second by Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Shut it off.
All right, so,
Yeah.
so.
All right,
Nothing will save, oh my God.
Biden won Virginia,
So your
North
finance.
Carolina, and